Future's now, old man.
What it do? We got rookies for you and audio too. This is Future First Podcast, where we are helping you win today with the Future First mindset. I'm your co-host J-Mac here with my co-host Jose. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Fresh, clean audio. Definitely no technical difficulties here before. We
None.
were trying to record nothing at all. But besides that, man, how you been, J-Mac?
Oh man, I've been getting over something. I don't know, COVID or something, man. Just dying over here all week. But I got that buttery smooth voice for you all back on the airwaves. But yeah, man, how are you?
I've been good, man. Yeah, just work week, typical thing. About to start another week here. I was just getting over the flu a couple weeks ago. Everybody in my house kind of ran through, got everybody sick, but everybody's good now. So start a new week, new month. Let's go get it.
Let's do it, man. You got plans for the Super Bowl?
Yeah, we're gonna host. See, we invited people,
Nice.
whoever shows up, cook some food and just kind of hang out.
Yeah, man, I know. I'm trying to figure out what we're gonna do. My wife was like, I just don't want to host. And I was like, okay, I guess we're going somewhere. I don't know where, but we're gonna figure something out. Maybe go to a pizza place, do something. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, some announcements here. We're still doing our roster review services. We'll review your rosters and provide roster construction feedback and give you general moves and even a few specific moves to make to improve your team. Or if you have a startup coming up and you want a draft strategy tailored to your format, we can do that too. We're going to charge $5 a team right now, and you can send your roster review quest to futurefirstpod@gmail.com if you're interested, and we'll send you some more information. And just to promote the roster reviews, we're doing a free team giveaway. Just make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below to enter the giveaway. And if you do want to subscribe, please go to the Future First Pod YouTube and subscribe there, like, and leave the comment there. If you are watching this on Player Profiler Now Plus, be sure to jump over to our channel and throw that like, subscribe on us so that we can get you entered into that. We got one on our last video. So we already got one entered into the giveaway. We'll run it at the end of February. So we'll have 4 more videos like this going up before we do pull the random winner. But yeah, man, we already got a hit on our roster reviews. So we're actually doing a whole league, and we're gonna be doing that here in the next week. I don't know. He said it was gonna be some private content. I don't know if he is gonna give it to us to kind of release, but that'd be a cool way to kind of show off what we're doing here. Okay, like and subscribe. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you touch down on that like button. Go for 2 on that subscribe. Be sure to drop a comment, especially if you want that givey. If you're catching this on the Player Profiler Network, you can be sure to follow us directly on YouTube at Future First Pod or on Spotify and Apple Pods, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, rate the show, drop us a 5-star review. Shout out to Fox, who's been helping us with our graphics. You can follow her on X at bfoxworth07. And also shout out to McGrumble, who's been helping us with all of our stats. You can follow him on X at ff_McGrumble. All right, man. That gets done with all the house cleaning. Let's get into this episode here because we got a good one packed for us. It's the 2026 rookie class overview. And we're just going to kind of take a look from top down. It's not that stinky, bro. We're taking a top look down here about what the class looks like, where its strengths lie, if there are any. I know you're a hater over here. But first, as always, man, a quick hit. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, man. I've been hearing a lot about Jalen Hurts' early startup ADP. And I'm a little shocked. I'm not going to lie. I know he wasn't great in fantasy this past year. The Eagles in general were a huge bust. I think we talked about it, relenting on how bad A.J. Brown was all season. As we drafted him in one of our startups this past season. He absolutely killed us. But Jalen Hurts, I've been looking around at some mock drafts, and in the super flex, I've seen him drafted at the 204, the 301, the 112, the 306. I saw him in another one where he went in the fourth, the early fourth. I think his ADP will probably settle somewhere in the second round, but probably likely in the back half, maybe the early third. How are you feeling about Hurts after this 25 season?
Yeah, I mean, I think how bad it was just got kind of overblown by kind of some of the stuff that was happening with the team itself in terms of his stats as they were compared to other seasons. I mean, he finished as a top 10 quarterback in most, I think in 4 and 6. He just didn't have the double-digit touchdowns, right? Like the tush push was not nearly as effective. The offense was not nearly as effective overall to get them down there to do the tush push. So he finished for, I think, the first time in his career, besides the rookie year, with not double-digit rushing touchdowns. So that hurt a bit. If you can get him at the back of the second or early third in a startup, you're talking about. I'm guessing this was for Superflex.
Yeah.
Then that's great. I mean, that would be awesome to either. I wouldn't mind that being my first quarterback, and then pairing him with some lower tier guys that you can get later, like a Goff, some of the rookies, some of these other players. I wouldn't hate that, and then I can get an elite player in the first round. I think part of the problem too is like what's going to happen. This is what his third offensive coordinator in as many years, right? They had Kellen Moore, he left. They had this guy, he left. Whoever they had before Kellen Moore. It clearly looks like they were lost on offense. They didn't really know what to do. It just seemed kind of like the game plan would go from one side to the other really quickly from week to week. So hopefully you hope they get somebody in there who's going to be very how do you say, like, use Jalen Hurts and his abilities and that offense's abilities. Obviously, they were also missing Lane Johnson for a decent amount of the season. I know he was hurt, so that affected the offensive line. But I love that price, to be honest. Like I don't mind that price at all, even regardless of who the OC is going to be and all that other stuff. Like that seems way more of the type of price I'm willing to pay to draft Jalen Hurts than what it was before, where he was like the 104, 105 a couple of seasons past.
Yeah, I started looking at, who they're looking at bringing in for their OC, and it looks like Sean Mannion is the first hit I'm getting, which is funny because I didn't hear any like big news about who they're hiring, and I thought that would have made kind of headlines there, but so I guess unconfirmed, but it's saying Sean Mannion, who looks like he was with Minnesota in most recent career as late as 2021 here. Yeah, man, I don't know. And when you said that about the tush push and how he hasn't had very many rushing, not double digit touchdowns, the tush push is, supposedly going away. So like, is this kind of like what we're supposed to expect from him? And, should we be cautious? Maybe his ADP is like actually where it should be going, if that's what it's going to look like in that offense. But I don't know. I don't necessarily buy into that narrative. I think to me, it was more on the offensive coordinator because it wasn't just Hurts. It was the entire offense. Like Saquon Barkley was bad. AJ Brown was bad. The only guy who really like shone through was Dallas Goedert. And and I mean he's not the the marquee piece in that offense that you're drafting here, right? So yeah, I don't know. I don't think he should be going as like the QB 6, 7 or later. And I think I'm smashing him at that ADP if he settles there and startup ADP.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what he finished around. He finished around back-to-back years as QB8. So he's not the difference maker that he was, 3 years ago when he was finishing in the top, 3 or 4. So he's not that sort of difference maker. He's also just, I feel like, decently consistent. I also think, it all depends on how they ban the tush push. Like he could still QB sneak. Like I don't think it's all them pushing. Like I think there's a lot of other things that have to do with the tush push that, like, depending on how they ban it or what exactly they ban about the play, like, the QB sneak's still going to be a play. So like
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that those one 1 yard push or 1 yard to go at the goal line is going to go away for him in terms of rushing upside. Like, I don't think it's all on the tush push. And this year wasn't even as effective as it was previous years when they've been officiating a little bit tighter with the offsides and the false starts. So even if they just went to a normal QB sneak, I mean, Jalen Hurts is still the big guy that he is, and he still is as strong as he is. I don't necessarily think it devalues his ability to score those touchdowns. I think just the offense was just not as good as it was previous years, so there was just less opportunity for him to do it. And overall, I think it has less to do with the tush push as a play and more the bad offense that they were running.
Yeah, he still squats like 1,000 pounds or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah,
his tush will push himself. You know what I mean?
exactly.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page there. I like that. Let's get into some fast draft talk. So this week they have the Super Bowl Super Slam going on, where you select your favorite 6 players for the big game, and it's a $10 entry. $1,000 goes to first place plus a $5,000 overall prize pool. So you have 1,000 going to first, and then 4,000 going to. I don't really know the payout structure, but I imagine it's probably like the next 50 or 100 players. And then the top 5 highest owned players for that contest currently are Jackson Smith-Njigba at 97.1%, Kenneth Walker at 95.9%, Ramondre Stevenson at 85.4%, Stephon Diggs at 70.8%, and Hunter Henry at 55%. Remember, there's no quarterbacks in this flex here. So yeah, this will be a weird one. You know, it's a tournament setting with a very limited field. These kind of best ball drafts are always fun. You have to find some unique ways to kind of get involved, like maybe Rashid Shaheed, or maybe you go even deeper than that, right? Like maybe you go for who's the rookie tight end for the Seahawks?
AJ Barner.
Well, AJ Barner, I think he's going to be popular too, but I was thinking the other guy that they drafted. Oh, it's escaping me, dude. I was just listening to a podcast about this guy too. Oh, it doesn't matter. But I think he would be a good flex. Like, just find a guy who can score, that may score, and that's how you win those tournaments. You got to find ways to get difference there. All right, man. And we're going to hear from the Podfather himself, and then we'll be right back, and we'll start talking about the 2026 rookie class overview.
If you play in Dynasty, you need Dynasty Deluxe, our premium package for Dynasty Leaguers. We rank over 300 players, updated every week, all year long. And there's a win now mode and a rebuild mode with Superflex and tight end premium controls. And a Dynasty League sync where you can say, sync down all of my sleeper teams, all my FFPC teams. And then you can browse around your leagues for who has needs. And then you can use our trade finder to see what kinds of trades are happening in leagues that are similar to the one I want to do. Then you can analyze trades using our trade analyzer, which balances the lifetime value, which includes pick values out to like 2028. All of that plus the rookie guide, $25 value is included. So if you're just in one Dynasty League, Dynasty Deluxe is well worth it. And use your host's promo code, and you can bump up to All In and get $25 off.
Elijah Arroyo, that's the guy you want to draft.
Oh, yeah, that'd be something.
Oh man, I'm telling you, he's gonna score a touchdown now just because I forgot his name. He's like, John, I'm gonna make sure you never forget my name again. All right, here we are in the 2026 rookie class overview. We wanted to look at some community sentiment about the class. You know, I think in general, people are saying it's bad or weak or, you know, not the greatest here. One of them being Jose over here. But we wanted to kind of look and compare each positions to previous year's classes. And how we're going to do that is we're going to compare it to PFF's big board. And we're taking a look at the players projected, selected in the first, second, and the third through seventh rounds of the NFL draft that are projected for the 2026 draft and comparing them to how many were selected in previous years for those ones. So let's just jump right into it here with our first graphic where we have the QB draft capital trends. And McGrumble put these stats together for us from 2016 to 2026. We simplified them into days. So we have this year projected 2 quarterbacks going within the first round. We typically see around 3 to 4 quarterbacks going on in the first round. And then rounds 2 and 3 on day 2, we have 3 quarterbacks projected this year, where we typically only have around 2. And day 3, we have 6 quarterbacks being projected, where we see around 6 to 5, depending on the 5 or 10 year average here. So overall, we're pretty on point, with where QBs are going or should be going. We have 1 less on day 1 and 1 more on day 2 projected. So that's not great, for the top end of things. And honestly, we might not even see 2 go on day 1. I don't know where your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the biggest positions that took a hit once I always forget his name, the Oregon quarterback decided to go back.
Yeah, Dante Moore.
Dante Moore, yeah. I just started looking at some stuff about him, and then he, went back to school, which is kind of one of the reasons that we wanted to wait. Now, the early declaration, for the draft has happened. We're getting Senior Bowls just happened, so we're getting some actual good stuff for the draft. So we have some knowledge, so we can kind of put these sorts of things together, like McRumble did for us. But yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the big spots that took a hit. What's the Ole Miss quarterback is? I think he's trying to fight to go back to school, if I'm not mistaken, who's another guy that was somewhat interesting that could potentially have been a first round draft pick. So I think you're probably only going to get one. I mean, maybe a team moves back in, one of these quarterback needy teams moves back in at the end of the first round if they see an opening to get a quarterback. But I really don't think you're going to get that sort of reach at the top, because even reaching this year just seems like a bad prospect more so than any other year. Like these guys, even Mendoza, he's not coming out as a Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, like one of these kind of Caleb Williams. Like he did win the Heisman. He looked really good during the playoff, but he's not coming out touted as like this sort of elite quarterback prospect, right? Like he's going to go 1 or 2 depending on what the Raiders do, but it's not some clear cut like, okay, ready to roll for sure, there's no way this guy's a bust type of pick. And that, we can get into the sentiment about the class a little bit later, but I think that's my overall feeling with most of the classes. Like it just doesn't feel like there's that many can't miss or elite for fantasy, right? When we're talking about fantasy specifically. So, but yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, right? Like this is all early projections without any draft capital. No. So, lots of things can change. Lots of people, there's always, I feel like quarterback is for the draft. Like the week before is always the time where randomly a guy shoots up everybody's board. Nobody really understands what's happening. Like, we've seen it multiple times, multiple years, kind of like this quarterback kind of comes out of nowhere. So we might have that, but, for now, it's looking like a pretty mediocre, position for drafting, especially if you're in need of a quarterback, right? You're playing in a Dynasty Superflex league. It's kind of Mendoza or bust, really. You could take a shot on some of these other guys that are in the class, but it really feels like if you're in need of a quarterback and you were hoping, that there was 2 or 3. So if in case you aren't in the top 3 or 4 picks. And then it also kind of makes you have to do a reach if you're really wanting a quarterback, right? Like if you're at the 103 and you have a chance at one of these wide receivers, what are you doing? Are you reaching for Mendoza? It doesn't feel great, right? Especially because Mendoza's not coming out as this, prodigal, like elite talent. But that's kind of what this class is going to force you to do in a lot of situations where you're kind of maybe just drafting a guy that you're not super excited about.
Yeah, you're probably not going to have to spend the 103 when we get to it. I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of taking this into comparison to what we saw from the 2025 rookie class, where Jackson Dart went, I think, 27th overall, something like that. He went in the back of the first. We'd probably see something similar like that again if we did see two quarterbacks go on day one here, where we all assume Fernando Mendoza is going to go 1 overall to the Raiders. And then after that, I don't think anyone's really looking to take a QB. I mean, the league is QB thirsty. Don't get us wrong. So I feel like someone will reach, but will it be on day one? Maybe, maybe not. I think the other guys in the running there are like a Ty Simpson, or there's also I forget his first name, but Shambliss. He's like a running quarterback. You know, some team might get big eyes for him, seeing how the league is changing and going towards these more mobile quarterbacks. So yeah, man, I get it. Like when I looked at this, the first thing that came to mind is it looks comparable to that 2022 QB class, where we have a little bit more polished of a prospect in Mendoza than we did in like a Kenny Pickett. And yeah, for your reference, that 2022 class was Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Bailey Zappi, Sam Howell, Brock Purdy. Woof, man. Hopefully we get another Brock Purdy out of this class.
I was about to say Brock Purdy's name is in there now, but pre-draft and going into it, nobody even knew who that guy was.
Yeah.
So it's only now you look back and you're like, you get to the end of the list and it's Brock Purdy. And you're like, okay,
he wasn't even drafted
exactly
in rookie drafts. Yeah,
exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I think for fantasy purposes, you're hoping. I just had to look it up. It's Trinidad. I don't know how to say his last name, so I'm not going to try to butcher it.
I got
Chambliss. Yeah, if he, if for fantasy at least, you're hoping that his 6-year eligibility gets denied by the NCAA, because otherwise he's going back to school. He's kind of a pretty interesting. He was playing D2 before, and then he came in and took over after Jackson Dart left. He had a pretty decent season. He's a little bit more mobile, a little bit might be more exciting, but otherwise, somebody will potentially fall in love with one of these guys. It happens every year, either at the combine or during the interviews. These bad teams that are bad in the NFL that have drafted 14 quarterbacks in 14 years will probably do it again. And for fantasy, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to ignore it. Like, it's hard to ignore it, but you have to really look at it and just say, like, okay, so he got first round draft capital, but like, there's no way you can do anything besides maybe a third round, that sort of thing. Like, you really have to step back and not be drawn in by the NFL draft capital.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. We'll be lucky if we get 2 inside of day one. And if you have a lot of 2026 picks, you're rooting for that, because that's just going to put one more player on the board, and to make your picks a little bit more desirable and stretch the value on them as far as you can. All right. You want to jump out of the QBs here and get into running backs?
Yeah, I just had one more thing to mention. I was looking at some other stats, and from 2014 to 2024, pretty much any quarterback that's not been drafted in the first 2 rounds has had very little hit rate for fantasy relevance. If you're drafted in the first round, it's about a 62% hit rate, meaning you're a viable fantasy option in the NFL, depending on what round you're drafted in. And then you have a 12.5 hit rate in the second round. You're basically 0 in the third round. And I think in the fourth round, it's like a 5.9%. And I think that's basically Dak Prescott. And I don't know, maybe another quarterback I can't think of, because I know Dak was in the fourth round. He's pretty much one of the only viable quarterbacks that went that late. But yeah, he'd be way down in the, what was it, 7th round, 8th round.
Oh, Jalen Hurts went day 2.
Yeah, but he was second round.
Oh, okay. So we're talking just the third round. Yeah, probably.
Just specifically. But so, you hope at least that some of these other guys at least make it into the day, when we're talking day 2, that they make it into the second round, early day 2, because otherwise the potential for them to be in fantasy relevant becomes very, very low.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Cool. That's good stuff there. I'm just curious. I don't know if you have it on hand, but when they say that they were a hit, do they give you any kind of standard for that? Like they were like a QB2 or QB3, or they were just
pretty
a
much
starter?
Just a like a startable fantasy asset. So anywhere from that to, like, obviously the elite of the elite, like Joe Burrows and what have you. But just pretty much a guy that like when you go to play in a 1 QB or super flex, like they're usable.
They're hitting the spot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Let's jump into the next one here with the running back draft capital trends. For 2026, on day one, we have one projected, Jeremiah Love. And man, he's the real deal. I hope you guys have the 101 out there and do not hesitate to spend it on him because he is him. On average, we usually have just over one in a fraction, 1.2, 1.4, depending on what average we're taking here. And then in day two, 2026 is projecting 3 running backs to be taken in rounds 2 and 3, where we typically see between 4 or 5 running backs going on day 2. And day 3, we have 11 projected this year, where we typically see around 15, just over 15. So the total here is we have 15 running backs total projected in this class, where you typically have 20 or 21 running backs total. So a little shorthanded, to say the least, here on what we're going to be looking here from our running backs.
Yeah, I mean, all the running backs came out last year. Like, I mean,
Yeah, that makes sense.
it's kind of what it seemed like. One guy that I'm really hoping can really either get early day 2 or somehow sneak into a first round somehow. I would love if somebody took what's his name? Oh man, Joe Coleman. Because
Mhm.
that dude's fun. I've seen a little bit of him and just his build, the way he looks, the way he runs, the big guy he is. Like, it would be exciting if a team did take him late first or early second. So, he got a little bit bump in draft capital. I think he would make it another kind of exciting pick in the middle of rookie drafts to think about outside of the wide receivers that we're going to talk about. But yeah, man, a lot of the running backs that people were excited for, we all saw kind of the supposed generational draft that it was last year. So it makes sense that this year's a little bit more dried up. And
Shallow, yeah.
yeah, so that's not too surprising from that standpoint. We'll see. The draft capital, I think, for running backs does determine a decent amount, but we're seeing more and more that some of these later guys, right? You had Monungai, Kyron Williams, even Bill Krosky Merritt, like some of these later round guys are getting shots into these offenses just because running back is kind of getting devalued more and more. So, there'll be some gems. Running backs is definitely, from a dynasty perspective, if you have off-season fab and in-season fab, which I hope in a dynasty league, that's how you're operating. If not, ask your commissioner to vote on that now. But going hard after the running back that didn't get drafted in like a 3-round dynasty rookie is one of my favorite ways. Tyron Tracy's another guy that kind of fits that bill, that have been, these guys are not Puka style where they're breaking the league because they weren't drafted or they went in the 3rd round or whatever, but they're, good pieces that you can use. And I feel like there's always 1 or 2 of them that go in like the 5th, the 6th, the 7th round of the NFL draft that become fantasy relevant.
Yeah, Bucky Irving, another one,
There you
right? I
go.
mean, he's even got some staying power here, which is nice. Yeah, I like the call on Tyrone Tracy and Kyle Monangai. Like, man, he's pretty good. I like that. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we're not going to have a ton of those guys this year, so it's definitely going to have to, choose your guy, and it'll probably be more landing spot dependent than anything else. So we'll have to kind of wait until April to see where we land on that. But yeah, this is the lowest number of RB prospects projected to be drafted in the last 10 years. So that kind of just speaks to the class in general. If the hit rate on these guys that go on day 3 is, like 2 or 5%, and we have 11 versus, the normal like 15 that we would see, it just lowers the chances even more that those guys are going to exist. But yeah, I mean, where else are you going to take your shots in this class? I mean, it's a very wide receiver rich class, so maybe you go that route, depending on what league and what you feel comfortable with. But to me, this is just somewhat reminiscent of the 2024 running back class, except we have a more, I guess,
Yeah.
established stud, yeah, in Jeremiah Love compared to Jonathan Brooks, who was the star of the 2024 class.
Yeah, 100%. And I honestly, the more as you're talking, all I can say is go back and watch our running back free agent class, because I feel like if there's an NFL team that needs a running back,
Good
they're
call.
probably going to be out looking in the market. You see what Kenneth Walker's doing if he has another great showing in the Super Bowl. I think it's more likely now with the ACL tear that he goes back, and not to rehash
Yeah.
too much of what we talked about on that show, but there's a decent running back pool of free agents. So I think you could see, some more money spent there, just given the low prospects that there is that they're in the running back draft class. So
Yeah.
that's kind of all that I was thinking when you were talking, is just, okay, these free agents, there might be more juice to be squeezed there. And trades to be made before they sign those contracts. And we covered all that in an episode a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and I'll link that right up in the corner there, so you guys can drop a like and a comment. Let us know what you guys think about that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, you're gonna have to take your shots on this class and at the running back. And I mean, that's usually where I like to spend my third round and fourth round picks, is on the running back. So hopefully I'll fall in love with someone here. And I do already have an early guy that I like. His name is Jam Miller. I hope he goes to a good landing spot, but I think he's out of Auburn.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into that more. So this is just our high overview of the class. We're going to get into the positions and individual prospects over the next few weeks here, guys. So stick with us, and we'll get you some more details on these individual prospects here. But with that said, let's jump into the wide receivers here.
And before you get started, Jim, if you don't mind, I just want to jump in real quick. So, I think it's been pretty set. Obviously, there's landing spots in the combine and everything, and I think wide receivers have a lot that can change during the combine and stuff. But the big three, how do you have them stacked, right? Like, we're talking about Tyson, Lemon, and Tate, right? Like, those are kind of known as the big three going into this. How do you have them stacked right now, before we have landing spots, before we have measurables, all this stuff?
Yeah, I'm probably going Lemon, Tate, Tyson.
Okay.
I like Lemon a lot. He's my go-to guy. And then we were looking at Tate the other day, kind of tangentially, when we were looking at the Fernando Mendoza. He was one of his wide receivers. And he looked really good. I was like, who's this 13 guy? He looks really, really impressive. And that was Carnell Tate. And I was like, okay, I like him. Jordan Tyson is good too. I'm just a little bit more worried. He's got some injury concerns that we have to deal with. But some of the people in the trusted space that I have are really high on him. And I think that I need to go back and watch some 2024 film on him to kind of get that feeling for him. Because yeah. What about you? Do you have an early inclination on these guys?
Oh, 100%. From what I've been seeing and some of the stuff I've been looking at, I agree with you. I think Tyson is uh, the guy at the bottom, and then I pretty much have him ranked exactly the same, right? Makai Lemon at the top, and then I think Tate. Although I think he's the guy I would take the swing on. The way I'm looking at it is, I think that Tyson is more safe for the NFL. Like, he's maybe coming in a little bit more NFL ready than Tate. But Tate feels like the big swing, right? He's coming from a wide receiver university, Ohio State. We know what they do there with receivers, but I think he has more of the ability to be a big time player in fantasy than Tyson does, but he also has way more potential, I think, to be a bust or not nearly as relevant. So I think it's in that's kind of how I play fantasy, and we'll get more into detail like we've been saying, but I just wanted to kind of just throw out those first three names and see. I think for now it seems like we're pretty much on the same page here, but
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, let's dive into the class as a whole here, with comparing it to the previous year trends. So 2026 is projecting 5 wide receivers to go on day one, where that's right around average for the past 5 years. And I thought this was interesting too. While we're looking at it, the 5-year average is about 5 receivers in this first round, a little over, whereas the 10-year average is 4. And I mean, it just goes to show like how thirsty the NFL is for these top wide receiver talents. And also, I think it speaks to the talent coming in. I think these wide receivers are getting better and better and that plays along with JJ Zachariason's pod that he put about the death of the wide receiver 2, and how the wide receivers are getting so good that they're eating into each other's production. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting, and we kind of have the data here on the screen to kind of back up that necessarily. All right, let's move on to day 2. We have 10 wide receivers projected to go in rounds 3 and 4, where you typically see 9.5 or 10 right around there. So again, on par. And then day 3, a whopping 23 wide receivers are projected to go on day 3, where we typically only see 17 or 18. So we have a total of 38 wide receivers, where over the 5-year average, we've only seen about 34. So 4 more than normal, which I guess kind of makes sense when we had the wide receiver class last year was a little shallow, very top end heavy. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think the common sentiment of the class is that this is the real strength of the class, is the wide receiver position. But McGrumble says that these guys are just getting pushed up because of the void of the talent at the other positions. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I agree with that analysis. I think you're going to see a decent amount of these wide receivers get pushed, at least when we're talking about like rookie dynasty drafts, into those middle rounds, like from the 106 to the 109, 110. I think you're just going to see a kind of grouping of wide receivers where people are just, taking shots because there maybe isn't a better option. Like there maybe isn't just like another player that you really feel good about, and that's why I feel like the class overall lacks is the fall off. To me, seems very clearly like, at least right now, obviously there's a lot that can change, but after the 105, it feels like I'm not really excited to have any of those picks, and I feel like in other years, even into the 109, 110, depending on how many quarterbacks and tight ends you were looking at, you could still be excited about players and not feel bad about being drafting there. Like, I have no idea who's going to end up in the 110, 111, 112, but at least right now, I have an inkling that I'm not going to be very excited to draft that guy. Like I'm going to be looking to trade away. And I think once that sentiment permeates into the fantasy football community, even if it's wrong, the pick's going to be very much devalued. So, I mean, for me personally, like once I started getting that feeling, I've been trying to trade away all those picks now before kind of that sinks in for the people that aren't super plugged in, that they're not looking at, our content or any content about rookies, in February. They're waiting until April. I'm trying to kind of just, if I can bail out of those type of picks, that's what I'm doing now, just because I have a strong feeling that that's what's going to happen. And I think those picks are just going to be way harder to trade out of once you're talking about April or after the NFL draft itself.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is really smart, right? I think one of the last edges that you can kind of have in Dynasty is figuring out where that tier break is early and kind of capitalizing it on one way or another, right? So what we're doing here is really important, I think, in trying to determine, who's going in these first rounds, and are they going to be fantasy relevant, and where does that teeter happen, where there's a cliff and where these picks just drop off in value in terms of the skill of the player that you'd be drafting at that position. And I don't know, I tend to agree with you, right? I think, after the 105, it starts to get a little blurry, but I think that's going to change. I think, especially if we have 2 quarterbacks go on day 1, we'll have a tight end at the very least go on day 1, and then we can have as many as 5 guys, go on day 1 here with the running back at the top 2. I mean, that's 9 right there that you probably feel day 1 prospects that you'd feel probably comfortable putting on your team. And if not, somebody will, and you'll have that value that you can kind of lean on there. Someone's gonna love the Matthew Golden of the class, and you're gonna sell the pick that's gonna pick that guy, so that you can dodge that landmine. So yeah, stick around, and I think we'll try and figure out where that edge is and get to that. I think, and I guess let's start here, right? when you're selling these late round picks, like, what are you targeting to get back for them? Because like I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum where I kind of want to buy these 108s, 107s because I feel like people are devaluing them. But I'm curious, if you've made any trades, what are you getting back for them?
I mean, I've spammed out a ton of trades. I haven't gotten anything back. I've gotten some people that are saying they're trying to wait till closer to draft, especially if I'm moving up. I mean, my favorite thing I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to take anything after the 105. And if it's two of them, hopefully one of them's like the 106, 107, and then like the 111 or something like that, and packaging that up and trying to move into the top 4 or 5 picks. If I can swing most calculators that I was looking at from the like 103, depending on what 2 picks you're sending, you can, it comes out as pretty even. Obviously different calculators have different values on picks, but I think that's pretty reasonable. I think you're not probably touching the 101. I think the 102 is still attainable if people haven't really caught on to who these wide receivers are. And so that's one of my top things I'm trying to do. I don't know how likely that is to get done right now with people just completely unaware, but maybe somebody just, they think that the class is deep and they can get. And if not, I'm trying to acquire a wide receiver. Like if I'm going to take a shot on a wide receiver at like the 107, why not just go get a guy that I already like, right? Like a Roma Dunze, a T Higgins, a Jalen Waddle. I mean, we did a whole, wide receiver that we were trying to buy towards the end of the season episode. Pretty much any of those guys I've been trying to spam out, either 2 firsts or a first in a couple seconds, like all types of offers like that. Because if I can get an established wide receiver that's only a couple years older, right? They're 24, 25, compared to the guy that's coming in that's 22 or whatever, some of these guys, and I already know they can produce at an NFL level, I just much rather have that than trying to make the pick or swing. And then obviously the thing we've been also talking about is if there's a way you can get a 27 first instead of the 26 first, since that that class continues, especially with some of these guys that are going back now, continues to swell in its the elite level of talent, right? That it seems like is going to be there in 27. Also trying to do that.
Okay, I dig it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If someone came at me for my 103 and they wanted to offer the 106, 107, and the 111, I'm sure you're asking for more back on top of that. But that would be a tough one for me to turn down, to be honest. Like that, like it just, you get 3 firsts for 1 first. And if I do feel like that tier break is, pushed later to like that 109, I might pull that trigger on that. I don't know. Am I in that league? Send me that trade.
No, unfortunately not in any of the leagues. I mean, like some of the other trades are like the 108 and the 111 for Chris Olave. That's probably a little bit,
Oh, I love that. Smash
the 108.
Olave.
Yeah. I mean, obviously these are, I'm trying to get an edge here. I don't think any of these are like grossly offensive, which is what we talked about. Like, I'm not trying to fleece somebody, but obviously it's something I prefer.
Yeah,
And
that's fair. I'm just like, give me Olave. I'm
Yeah.
super high on him right now.
Same thing, like 108, 111 for Roma Dunze and like a late third, I think it was. So there's a couple different leagues where I was tanking, where I'm trying to do those sorts of trades. Like a first and a second for Brian Thomas. So T Higgins, a first and a second for T Higgins. Jalen Waddle, a first and a second. We're talking about a first that's like the 108 and like a mid second. So I don't know, just trying to see if anybody's low. Some of these players are high. Olave had a really good season. Waddle, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. Higgins is kind of a guy that kind of seems his market kind of stays the same no matter what he does. And he continues to always be productive in the NFL when he's healthy. So just those sorts of moves before maybe everybody kind of, like you were saying in a chat, like gets the group think and everybody feels the same. If everybody starts feeling that the 108 through the 111 are trash in 2 months, then I don't think I get any of those deals done. I think right now is the chance where you could get a deal like that done. So that's why I've just been spamming those offers out, seeing what I get, maybe some mild interest. What can I work on?
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be seeing 15 wide receivers going within day 2 of the NFL. So I know those day 2 wide receivers aren't highly coveted, but I think I think that we might be surprised at where we end up with this class, at least, especially since we've been just so spoiled with the past 2 years. Our draft classes the past 2 years have been really good. So I think this one just kind of pales in comparison, and we have that goldfish memory here where we just forget what it can be like, right? I'm looking at you, 2020 draft class. Yeah, no, okay. Well, do you have any more you want to say on the wide receivers here, or should we hop to break before we go into the tight ends?
Yeah, I think let's hit the break then.
All right, guys, we'll see you in a minute. All right, we are back here to discuss the last position that we have, which is the tight end draft capital trends here. And it's a pretty deep tight end class that we're looking at. In total, there's 19 tight ends projected to be drafted, where we typically only see just over 14. Day one, we have a stud going day one, compared to last year where we had two, Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren. This year it is Kenyon Sadiq, and I've heard a lot about him. I haven't watched any of his tape yet, but I've heard that I've had someone tell me he's better than Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren. So I'm curious when I flip on that tape what we're going to see there. And then in day two, we have 3 tight ends projected to go off the board, whereas on average we have just over 4 normally. So a little short there. But then day 3, 15 tight ends projected to fly off the board between rounds 4 through 7, where we typically only see around 9 being going off the board. So yeah, a pretty good draft class. I think in general, we have a total of 4 tight ends going within day 2, and then a landslide of 15 of them coming in day 3. I have a feeling like it's not going to go that way. Especially with what we were talking about with the trend of the NFL when we were kind of discussing how to beat the cover 2 and the high safeties and beating them up the seam and stacking the box, with 12 personnel so that you can run the ball a lot more. And again, that just lines up with what JJ Zachariason was posting. If you haven't seen that episode or watched it, do yourself a favor, Late Round Fantasy, go check them out. It's a great podcast. I've heard it discussed on other podcasts, like that singular episode, not like we're doing here, obviously we're doing a much better job talking about it. But yeah, I think it's kind of groundbreaking. He does really good work. Probably the best statistical research I've seen out there. But if we see these trends continue, and a copycat league, I think we might see more than 4 tight ends go in day 2 here, especially with how deep the class is. I think people are going to fall in love with, or teams are going to fall in love with some of these guys and maybe reach a little more than they should, and get them going. But I am very interested to see how it plays out, because we do have a very good free agent market for tight ends this year. And again, I'll plug it up there again, for you guys to take a look at that video. And I think we'll get a lot more answers questioned with free agency. So we can kind of, by March, we'll move into the draft feeling having more idea of how April will shake out with the 3 days of the draft here. So yeah, tell me your thoughts on this tight end class here in general, man.
Yeah, I mean, do you normally have your answers questioned a lot, J-Mac? Is that happens regularly?
My answers questioned a lot? Is that
Yeah,
what I said?
That's what you said. Yeah.
I actually, you know what? I do have my answers questioned all the time.
For an engineer, that's a little scary.
No one believes a word I say.
No. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about Kenyon Sadiq. I got to be honest, tight end is the position I've looked at least. but his name has been obviously the one at the top. I've heard him compared a little bit more to like a Gerald Fannin style, like that's kind of like he would play that sort of role. And in terms of the league trend, it's just going to be very interesting to see, like, is it going to go into kind of like a rotational split tight end room, kind of like the Rams do. Obviously, McVay is
Yeah.
like on a different level in scheming, or a likely Andrews, where like half the time you're just really upset that neither of them really did anything because they were kind of just aiding to each other's work. Or is it going to make more tight ends fantasy relevant? I think that's kind of where we're still waiting to see where that league trend is. Like, is it going to make it so that more guys are elite, for fantasy, besides maybe the top 5 or 6 tight ends every year? Because once you get into the back half of tight end ones, they're just kind of guys that are solid, but you're not expecting very much. You're just knowing you're not going to get 0 points, but you're not also expecting more than like 10 or 12 points on any weekly basis from those sorts of guys. So is it just kind of like one of those things that the tide is going to rise, bring all the boats up? So now we have, more tight ends that you feel good, that you think are a positional advantage. It's going to be very interesting. It's pretty interesting to see how many tight ends are projected to go. I mean, that can only speak good about the ones that get drafted earlier, because that means they rose above all these other guys that are getting drafted. So it will be definitely very interesting getting into and watching some of the tapes. I think tight ends are very interesting because they have they're asked to do a lot that a lot of other players aren't, right? Like, you see Kittle, he's asked to block and he's awesome at it, but he doesn't just block. Like, there's just blocking tight ends, guys that are basically like smaller linemen that get thrown out there that never get a chance to catch a pass. And then there's other guys that evolve their game and can do both, and that is actually great because they're on the field way more, right? Like, George Kittle is basically on the field almost every play because he can do everything. So it's going to be interesting to see what those guys have. And a good tight end class, when we've had a McBride, when we've had the 2 guys, Warren and Loveland and Bowers, only means that with the guys that are already in the league that are good, you'll have more tight end options, which is always good, right? Like, it's always better to have more pieces, easier to build rosters, easier to come around to trading for those pieces. So it can only be good things if we can get at least another 1 or 2 good to very good tight ends out of this class.
Yeah, it's I don't know what to make about it. And like you were saying with the McVay offense and how they're running like 12 personnel, I think it was something like 40% of their snaps or something like that was in 12 personnel. And with George Kittle, like, they run a lot of 12 personnel, not necessarily with the second tight end, but with the fullback in there. It's and why they do that is because they're changing up their looks, and they think that they're blocking, and then all of a sudden it's a chip and you leak out, and George Kittle does his thing and just goes for 20 yak, right? And I don't know what we're gonna see. Like, is the league gonna catch on and start doing copycat? Like, could definitely see like Minnesota following suit here. I mean, we've already seen it with the Seahawks and what their offensive system is doing this year. What's that gonna look like once we see? Help me out here with the OC, Clint Kubiak. I always get them confused, man. There's a Clint, there's a Clay, there's another one. All these K guys running around. Yeah, no, but with Clint Kubiak,
Yeah, it's Clint Kubiak. I mean, but I think he might be leaving, right?
that's what I'm saying, and he's going to go to the
Yeah.
Raiders. And so now, you got Brock Bowers, but you also have Michael Mayer there, right? So like maybe Michael Mayer is a buy. Like, are we going to get ahead on that? And and I don't know. Like, these are the things that we have to kind of think through here. What really like sucks, like, to like admit when we talk about all this, is that Arthur Smith was actually like
A pioneer. He actually
yeah,
was
like
the grandfather.
he was doing like the right things to win football. He just like hated fantasy football so much that he just had like 4 tight ends that he would use. He would cycle them rather than just like funnel it to 2 guys. And so I'm glad we don't have to deal with him anymore. He's off to the college level. We'll see how that affects us though, because I mean we have Jeremiah Smith on his team now. So Yeah, man. So I don't know. Let's take a summary here and kind of step back from these individual prospects, or I guess individual positions themselves, and just kind of give me like your summary of what the class is going to look like here.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing I've been kind of rattling in my brain in terms of just like when we talk about fantasy football like assets and these players, and the word elite to me seems to like it gets used way too much, and maybe that's just my own brain how I see it. But I personally, even with um Jeremiah Love in this class, and you know, Makai Lemon and those wide receivers we talked about, I don't really see an elite fantasy football player, right? Like I really genuinely don't see a guy that is going to be a top five producer at his position right now, right? Obviously, if Jeremiah Love goes to the Chiefs, like a lot of people are hoping, maybe that changes my mind. If you know Makai Lemon hits the perfect spot, it could change. But just out of college, coming out of college with their ability, I don't see like an elite level talent. I see really good players and ones that could be elite depending on other things. But I just personally don't see a Bijan Robinson, a Saquon Barkley, a Jonathan Taylor, you know, an Ezekiel Elliott level of running back from Jeremiah Love, at least from how I'm looking at him. Like, don't take me wrong. It's not that he's very much below those guys, but he's, I think, a step behind those guys, right? So when I look at the class overall, he's kind of the shining, you know, jewel of the crown, and even him, I wouldn't consider like an elite fantasy level option. So it just kind of leaves you feeling, or at least leaves me feeling like the class is just like, like there'll be guys, there's gonna be producers, there has to be like some of these guys will get put into positions, injuries, whatever, they play way better than their tape and everybody thought. Like it happens every year, you know, every draft season. So it's not that there won't be guys and there won't be, you know, I mean, Puka Nakua is now what, the wide receiver 1, 2 in fantasy football, and you know who was he when he was coming out of the draft, right? So those things are going to happen. It does happen, you know, somewhat routinely to the NFL, because scouts in the NFL get things wrong even there. So it just kind of, that's why I feel like I don't think the class is awful. Like I don't think it's horrible, but it just makes you feel like if you were rebuilding and hoping, you know, you stockpiled 5 picks for this draft, you're not super excited, right? Like this is not um, the a couple classes ago, like you were talking about, right? Like the kind of generational, like, you know, with the quarterbacks and the running backs and wide receivers, where you felt like, hey, I can leave this draft if I have 5 picks and you know 2 of them are in the top 5 and one of them's like with 3 legit starters to like 2 elite, you know, players, right? Like you don't feel that way, I think, unless you somehow have like the 101 through the 104, right? Like you just personally aren't feeling like this is the big rebuild that you're like, oh, this is where my team fully turns it around. And that's kind of where I'm coming from like fantasy analyzing the class, right? I just it just lacks that sort of star power to me. And maybe I need to watch more Jeremiah Love. Maybe, you know, what, like I said, once he gets a landing spot, maybe when he tests, things will be different. But that's just my initial thoughts, right? Like this class overview that we're doing. That's just how I view the class. It feels like it's lacking at the top. There's a lot of substance in the middle, and even that substance in the middle isn't a ton, right? Like it's not super depth, like any position, even the wide receivers. I don't feel like you. Would you say you feel about the wide receivers? I know it's early in the process. I haven't gotten to look at everybody, but at least what like people are saying and what you've heard, like, do you feel the same way about the wide receivers as you did the running backs last year, where it's like, oh, there's a lot of really good players to draft, including Genti at the top, which is like the you know the top guy. I feel like with the wide receivers, even after like the first 5 or 6 names, it kind of quickly falls off from what I've seen people talking about. To like, hey, this guy could be a good wide receiver too. This guy could be a good solid this. It doesn't sound like even now people are saying, you know, there's 11 wide receiver ones in this class, right? Like that, and that's just kind of overall my thoughts and feelings about the class. I know you kind of seem to be sitting on the opposite side.
No, it's not that. It's not like I'm high on the talent in the class. I'm just more optimistic about how these draft picks will be viewed come April. I think we tend to kind of knock them down early in the season when we see the draft class, but every year, like you said, like these guys kind of climb the ranks and they get in their heads, and people get thirsty for these draft picks because they have FOMO. And I just think the way we look at the draft picks now, where we think the top five are valuable and everything after that is just discarded. I think that's going to change. And so I'm trying to capitalize on that sentiment there, and targeting those, 105 to 109 draft picks, I think is probably the move to do if you can get them cheap. I'm not trading 2027 capital to do it. But I will happily trade away players, or other picks. I'm curious to know what those prices are for those picks. I haven't gotten into that, and maybe we'll get into that here shortly. But yeah, and on a separate note, like where are we at in like tiering these words? Generational, elite, and like stud, or like blue chip, right? I mean, like I feel like generational is above elite, so like maybe elite is right. Saquon and them, they're the generational, right?
Yeah, I mean it's all kind of word salad and how you want to mix it up. I think to me, elite is like the top, right? Like if I say someone's a generational, to me, elite, it seems like I'm using those as synonyms, like they mean the same thing to me. But I know
Okay.
other people kind of have different perspective on that. Like even comparing. Dang, cat just jumped on me. Um, even comparing Jeremiah Love to like Genty from just last year. Obviously,
No.
Genty's has been poo-pooed because of his bad season with the Raiders, but I feel like there was a lot more hype for Genty coming out of college, right? Like, would you not say that even him there
No,
was
yeah, like when you were saying, like, like, is the wide receiver class now looking like how we were viewing the running back class last year? And I would say it's similar, right? Like where we have a bunch of guys going, and there's going to be a lot of like day two, day three guys that we're going to just take dart throws on. And then it is kind of top heavy. Like if we do get five in the first round, I think that's going to be pretty like on par with what we got from the running backs and where we feel comfortable with them. Like obviously we had two running backs go on the first day last year. Is that right? Yeah, we had Genty and Hampton, and then we had three on day two. No, four on day two. So we had like six. But like it's not the same. Like running backs on day two are like wide receivers on day one. Like they're probably like similar hit rates there on that case. So if we have six, versus like five, and maybe we have one taken early second round that, people are buying hype on, I think it will be pretty similar to that. And the way we were viewing the running backs last year was like Genty at the top, and then nobody had like a consensus between like the next three guys. I feel like Omari and Hampton was pretty locked in there, but then from there, like people were flipping Judkins, Caleb Johnson, and
Harvey.
Travion Henderson. Yeah, Harvey got left in the dust, man, unfortunately, but yeah, but that is what it is. Okay, cool. Yeah, and then I don't know. We have one more last note here on the doc. If you wanted to bring that up before we hit the outro here.
Yeah, I mean it's mostly just like the NIL, and I think it's a pretty broad and like long discussion to try to cram in. I think there's just a lot of players that are just going to be going back, and I think right now this draft class, because the way people are talking about it from an NFL standpoint is even on the defensive side, it's lacking kind of talent, right? So it's just a shallow
Mm.
talent pool of players in general as a whole NFL draft, not just looking at fantasy. And I think that's part of that is being caused by NIL, right? And we're kind of the whole college scene and pro scene are still adapting to how that's all like working and how that's all changing the landscape. And is there going to be, people like coming in and regulating it, whatever, all that sort of stuff. So it's just, I think this class is kind of a microcosm of what we might see. Like there just might be in fantasy these pockets of years off and on, or maybe every 3 years, whatever it might be, where all of a sudden it's a new crop of players and new kids coming out of high school, and they're staying in college just an extra year because they can make $5 million playing in college instead of coming out or whatever it is. And it's just going to devalue the draft classes. And it might be hard. You might not have any way to predict because college is so finicky when it comes to, you know, how you view things at the beginning towards the end of the season. But I just thought it was interesting just because I know, NIL is a pretty big topic of discussion within the college sports and the college football. But yeah.
Okay. Cool. No, I'm kind of with you there. And yeah, what I hear too is like it's pretty rich for like the trenches too. I think that there's a pretty good like offensive line. And there's some good defensive edge rushers, I want to say, but maybe more top end stuff and maybe not as deep as we like to see. Okay, cool. All right, man. Let's get into the outro here. Hopefully you guys like that. Stick with us. And like I said, the next couple of weeks, we'll dive into these individual prospects and give you a better analysis of kind of where we stand on them. Spoiler alert, Jose hates them. No, but we'll get into that. And thank you all for watching and listening. And yeah, we'll see you guys. Oh, check us out over on Rookie HQ. We're gonna drop some new like rookie evaluations or market evaluations. So Jose, man, sign us out, bud.
Yep, as always, please like, subscribe, comment on YouTube. Don't forget, get in on our giveaway. If you want a team evaluation, hit us up. And then, you know, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, like, subscribe. We really appreciate you guys. See ya.